UFC underdog knockouts. Every list of the biggest UFC upsets opens the same way. Mixed martial arts, the story goes, is the most upset-prone sport there is, and the betting market can't keep up with it. The first half of that is arguable. The second half has been tested twice by academics, and the results don't say what the lists assume. Every fight in this video is real, and several of them turn divisions upside down. What none of them establishes is an edge. Those two things are worth pulling apart before the highlight reel starts. Next, what the research found. Thomas Robbins of East Carolina University pulled 6,190 UFC fights from June 2007 through December 2022 and set them beside 6 team sports. The paper ran in the American Journal of Management in 2023. 2 of its findings matter here. The first is cost. UFC bookmakers held 4.40% on average. That was the highest margin of the 7 markets Robbins measured, ahead of the NBA and the NFL at 3.63 and hockey at 3.28. Betting fights is the most expensive of the major markets before anyone has picked a winner. The second finding is worse. The average return to the UFC bettor came to negative 5.82%. That sits 1.42 points below the hold itself, and Robbins reports the gap as statistically significant, which means money is leaving the bettor beyond the stated margin. He found a real long-shot bias in the sport. The biggest underdogs returned significantly less than the favorites facing them. Backing the romantic side of a mismatch has been, across 16 seasons, the worst version of an already expensive bet. Slight underdogs did better. 2 of Robbins' 20 odds bins, both on the underdog side of the board, returned about 2.4 and 2.5% across the full sample. That sounds like the edge these pages usually promise. Neither one cleared the 5% threshold, with p-values of 6.3 and 6.5%. Robbins declines to call them profitable, and anyone quoting him should decline too. A second study points the other way. Kayana Miller and Mark Nichols analyzed MMA odds from Tapology.com for a 2026 paper in the Journal of Economics and Finance. They found no favorite long-shot bias at all, and concluded that MMA is largely efficient compared with other sports. They did flag one gap. Oddsmakers, on their reading, aren't pricing youth or travel properly. 2 datasets, 2 methods, 2 answers on whether the bias is even there, and nothing published settles which of them is measuring the sport correctly. What they agree on is the part that reaches a bettor. No simple rule based on price has been shown to beat the hold. Next, nobody agrees what they paid. Before trusting any ranking of upsets by odds, it's worth asking what the odds actually were. The lists disagree, and the gaps are wide enough to change the conclusion. Shana Dobson's second-round stoppage of Maria Agapova in 2020 gets cited nearly everywhere as the largest betting upset in UFC history. Her price shows up as plus 800 on one site. On another, it's plus 950. On a third, plus 1150. Those are implied probabilities of 11.1, 9.5, and 8.0%. A $100 ticket at plus 1150 pays $350 more than the same ticket at plus 800, which is nearly 44% more profit for the same fight and the same result. Holly Holm against Ronda Rousey runs the same way. Plus 950 in some places, plus 635 in others. 4 full points of implied probability apart. Juliana Pena against Amanda Nunes turns up anywhere from plus 500 to plus 775. Fight odds do vary honestly across books, and they move hard in the final week, so some of that spread is real. The rest is copying. Treat any single quoted price as one book's number at one moment, because that is what it is. Next, the 2 everyone cites. Matt Serra beat George St. Pierre for the welterweight title at UFC 69 in Houston on April 7, 2007. It was the first UFC card ever held in Texas. Serra had earned the shot by winning the 4th season of The Ultimate Fighter, and he walked in at 7-1, with some books quoting him longer still. He caught St. Pierre with an overhand right early, swarmed him, and the referee waved it off at 3 minutes 25 of the opening round. St. Pierre took the belt back the following year, which is the part that tends to fall out of the retelling. Holly Holm knocked Ronda Rousey out with a second-round head kick at UFC 193 in Melbourne in November 2015, in front of more than 56,000 people. Rousey came in unbeaten through 12 fights and had finished nearly all of them quickly. Holm, a former boxing world champion, was thought too thin on the ground to survive. Rousey fought once more, lost to Amanda Nunes in 48 seconds, and never competed again. The Forbes betting retrospective makes the point that Holm had always been a bad stylistic matchup for her, and that is the uncomfortable thing about upset lists generally. A result that looked impossible beforehand often looks overdetermined afterward. The odds were the only surviving record of what people actually believed at the time. Next, when champions get caught. Anderson Silva had defended the middleweight title 10 straight times across nearly 7 years when Chris Weidman knocked him out at UFC 162 in 2013. Silva spent the second round dropping his hands and taunting. Weidman threw a left hook while he was doing it. Juliana Pena submitted Amanda Nunes at UFC 269 in 2021 with a second-round rear naked choke. Nunes had stopped Rousey in 48 seconds and Chris Cyborg in 51, held 2 belts at once, and hadn't lost a fight since 2014. The rematch went Nunes's way, clearly. Both results are true, and the second one is why a single upset is weak evidence about anything. Holm found the same thing from the other side. Under 4 months after beating Rousey, she lost the belt to Miesha Tate, caught in a 5th-round rear-naked choke while ahead on the cards. The sport turns over fast, and the fighter who produced the last great upset is a reasonable candidate to be on the wrong end of the next one. Next, 2 fights in 2026. Justin Gaethje beat Ilia Topuria at UFC Freedom 250 on June 14, 2026, on the South Lawn of the White House, taking the lightweight title off an undefeated 2-division champion. CBS Sports put Gaethje at plus 380 against a champion at minus 500. Gaethje was floored by body shots, survived a bad second round, and dropped Topuria in the third. Topuria's corner stopped it before the final round, with what CBS reported as an apparent fracture of both orbital bones. 5 weeks earlier, on May 9th, Sean Strickland took the middleweight title from Khamzat Chimaev by split decision at UFC 328 in Newark. CBS Sports listed Strickland at plus 425 against a champion at minus 575, and Yahoo Sports described him as better than a 4-to-1 underdog on many books. Chimaev was undefeated. He dominated the opening round on the mat, and then Strickland stuffed the takedowns and won most of what happened on the feet. 2 judges scored it 48-47 for Strickland. The third had the same score the other way. Neither result had much to do with the fighters being underpriced. Both had to do with fights being fights. Next, why fights break the form book. The structural case holds up even where the betting case doesn't. 1 clean shot ends a contest that a team would have 3 hours to climb back into, so a fighter can lose almost every exchange and still win. Weight cuts add a variable that shows up in no previous performance and sometimes goes badly on the day. And styles interact in ways a single skill rating can't capture, since a fighter who handles strikers may have no answer at all for a wrestler. Where the usual explanation overreaches is the psychology. Underdogs supposedly fight loose, while favorites carry the pressure. It sounds right. No published dataset demonstrates it. It might well be true, and anyone stating it as fact is guessing. Next, the honest read. UFC underdogs win something close to 35% of the time. A few betting outlets put the figure between 34 and 36% over the last decade. On its own, that number is empty. A 35% win rate breaks even at plus 186. 34% needs plus 194, and 36 needs plus 178. Whether those wins were worth anything depends entirely on what the tickets paid, and Robbins measured exactly that across 6,190 fights and found the bettor down 5.82%. That is the distance between an upset being thrilling and an upset being profitable. The contrarian case was never that underdogs win often. It was that they are sometimes mispriced, and testing that requires knowing the price. And fight odds are the hardest prices in mainstream betting to pin down after the fact. Serra at 7-1 paid once. The several hundred other fighters priced around there over the same stretch did not, and nobody writes those ones up. Anyone betting on this sport should keep it inside what they can afford to lose, and treat the National Council on Problem Gambling helpline as the number to call if it stops feeling like a choice. If this was useful, hit the like button and subscribe. The full analysis, with sources, is at LoserWins.com.